Hey, what is up, all of y'all? Welcome back to Mike and Juju's Movie Corner. That's right, the show where we watch the movies that time forgot about so that you guys don't have to. As always, I'm your boy and your host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Juju. We're coming at you with another forgotten gem from the vault.
That's right, and today we've got something special planned. We are talking about that 1989 counterculture comedy, Rude Awakening, starring Cheech Marin. But not with Chong, with Eric Roberts.
And in honor of Cheech, we're partaking in some completely legal, totally medicinal herb tonight for research purposes.
Pure research, y'all. Got to get in the right headspace for this one. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We're professionals, people.
Alright, so before we dive in, y'all, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button for us if you haven't already. And you can follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and of course right here on YouTube. And if you want more content, we have other shows, so check them out.
Your turn, bro. A reminder that last week we covered Adventures of Babysitting. So check that out if you haven't already.
Today we're going to be going from babysitters to revolutions, y'all, with Rude Awakening. Now, it's a movie about 1960s hippies, but set in the 1980s.
So, let's get into it.
Alright, so Rude Awakening. This movie came out in 1989. It was directed by David Greenwald and Aaron Russo.
Aaron Russo, by the way, was a fascinating dude. He managed Betty Miller, produced Trading Places, and later became this hardcore libertarian political activist.
Wow, really? I did not know that, Juju.
Yeah, man, interesting career trajectory. But anyway, this movie is about these two hippies, Fred and Jesus, played by Eric Roberts and Cheech Marin.
Yeah, Eric Roberts as a hippie is already kind of amazing casting, right?
Right. So these guys have been hiding out in the jungles of Central America since the 60s because they thought they were wanted by the FBI for bombing a draft board.
Yeah, which, to be clear, they didn't actually do, y'all. They were framed for it.
Exactly. So, they've been living in this jungle commune for like 20 years with no contact with the U.S. And they finally decide to go back to New York to see what's happening to America.
Yeah. And this is where the fish out of water comes in. Now, these guys are stuck in the 1960s, and they're in the materialistic Reagan era's 80s.
It's basically like if Austin Powers was about Vietnam War protesters instead of a spy.
That's actually perfect, man.
I have my moments. So, they go back to their old neighborhood in New York, where used to be this hippie paradise, but it's now gentrified with yuppies everywhere.
Sellouts. And they reconnect with their old friend Samantha, played by Julie Hagerty, who's now a high-powered advertising exec.
Cultural Flash is the whole point of the movie. It's asking what happened to all those 60s ideals. Did everyone just sell out?
Definitely. Which is actually a pretty interesting premise for a comedy, y'all.
Here you go. Yeah. It's like a time capsule of both eras.
Alright, y'all. Let's talk about Cheech Marin in this movie.
This was during his post-Cheech and Chong era when he was trying to establish himself as a solo actor.
Right. Him and Tommy Chong had split up at this point.
Yeah, and they had creative differences or whatever. Cheech wanted to move beyond just stoner comedy.
And that's why he took this role as a stoner.
I mean, you gotta play to your strength. But to be fair, Jesus is more than just a stoner stereotype. He's this idealistic revolutionary.
Yeah, and he actually brings some heart to the role. Like, you believe that this guy really does care about changing the world. Yeah, that's the thing about Cheech Marin that people forget. Because of Cheech and Chong stuff, he's actually a solid actor, y'all.
For sure. He went on to work with Robert Rodriguez in From Dusk Till Dawn and Desperado, and had that long run on Mashed Bridges.
That's right. And he voiced a bunch of characters in Disney movies, y'all.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he was in The Lion King. He was in Cars. He was in a lot of other The Hyenas. He was one of the hyenas in Lion King.
That's wild. From counterculture icon to Disney voice actor. That's a career arc we all aspire to.
Yeah. But in Rude Awakening, he's still very much in this element. Like, some of the best jokes come from his reactions to the 80s culture as a 60s revolutionary. Those fish out of water moments really work in this one.
Now, we gotta talk about Eric Roberts as Fred, because that is some wild casting.
Yeah, Eric Roberts, man. What a career this dude has had. Like, he's been in, like, what, 600 movies at this point?
At least back in 1989, he was still known as a serious actor who had been in Runaway Train and Star 80. And then he decides to play this spaced out hippie in a comedy. It's a weird choice, but it kind of works.
Hey, I think it works because he commits so hard. Like, he's not winking at the camera or anything. He fully believes he's this revolutionary who's been living in the jungle for 20 years.
That's true. And he has this great naive quality as Fred. Like, he genuinely thinks he can just pick up where the revolution left off.
Yeah, I mean, it's something kind of sad about his character, to be honest. Like, he's preserved an amber from the 60s. And the world has just moved on without him.
Totally. And Eric Roberts plays that disappointment really well when he realizes that all his old friends have basically become what they used to be fighting against.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that Eric Roberts is Julia Roberts' brother. And she was becoming this huge star around this time.
Right. Pretty Woman came out the next year, I think.
Yeah. And Eric had been the famous Roberts for years before that.
Hollywood is weird, man.
Yeah, it really is. Back to Eric in this movie, though. Now, I think he and Cheech actually have pretty good chemistry together.
They do. They feel like these old friends who've been through a lot together, which makes their journey back to America more meaningful. Yeah. Eric Roberts doesn't get enough credit for his range. Dude can do serious drama, action, and apparently hippie comedy.
Yeah, and he can cry in every movie. Alright, your turn, bro. And yeah, justice for Eric Roberts. Let's go. Let's talk about the rest of the cast, because there are some interesting people in this movie. Starting with Julie Hagerty as Samantha. Now, she's the girlfriend who's now this huge advertising exec.
Julie Hagerty from Airplane fame. She plays this woman who's kind of caught between two worlds.
Yeah, like she used to be part of this activist crowd, and now she's really sold out. I mean, she makes ads for products that are probably destroying the planet.
Her character is basically the thesis statement of a movie. What happened to all those idealistic 60s kids?
Yeah. And then there's Buck Henry.
Buck Henry, co-creator of Get Smart and screenwriter for The Graduate.
Yeah, that's right. He plays this super uptight lawyer who's the complete opposite of our hippie heroes.
And Robert Carradine plays our old friend, which is pretty ironic.
Yeah, like he's a big sellout. He's got the ponytail, I think, and like just huge.
Exactly. And then there's Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley as June, another former revolutionary who's now all about the 80s materialistic lifestyle.
Hey, you know, what's really interesting is that all these TV actors from the 70s are playing these former revolutionaries. It's kind of like a meta commentary on how counterculture gets absorbed by the mainstream.
Whoa, that's deep.
Yeah. I think the herbs might be working, y'all. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, you're on to something. It's like the movie is saying, even the actors who played these rebellious characters on TV in the 70s were part of a system by the 80s.
Yeah, see? Like, this movie has layers, bro.
And let's not forget Louise Lasser as Petra, who's still living that hippie lifestyle.
Yeah, she's the one authentic person left in the old circle. This casting director for this movie really knew what they were doing. I think we need to talk about how this movie portrays the 80s versus 60s. Because that's what it's really all about. Like, this movie has some pretty clear point of view about the 80s, and it's not exactly favorable.
The 80s are depicted as a soulless, greedy time where everyone's just out for themselves.
Right? It's all shoulder pads, cocaine, and corporate takeovers.
Whereas the 60s are portrayed as an idealistic time when people actually cared about causes of each other.
Right? But I think the movie is a little more nuanced than that. Now, it's not just saying the 60s are good, the 80s are bad.
How so?
I mean, well, Fred and Jesus are kind of shown as these naive guys who don't really understand how the world really works anymore. Because they've been living in this isolated bubble.
That's true. And there's that subplot about how their revolutionary commune in Central America isn't really as perfect as they think it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like the movie is saying that pure idealism isn't the answer either, y'all.
I think you're right. It's more about finding a balance. Like, you can hold on to your ideals without completely checking out of society.
Right? And there's also this theme about growing up and facing reality, y'all. Like, Fred and Jesus have basically been in Arrested Development for 2 decades.
Wow. Meanwhile, all their friends have moved on, for better or worse.
Yeah, like, there's really this great visual contrast about it all. Between the jungle where they've been living and now the concrete jungle of New York.
Good point. The movie actually has some pretty striking visuals when it comes to showing that difference.
Here you go. And
which honestly still feels relevant today.
yeah, I mean, like, some things never change, usually. Alright, let's talk about the humor in this movie, though, because it is supposed to be a comedy, even though they're getting pretty deep in all this. Yeah, there's also some physical comedy, especially from Cheech. I mean, he brings a lot of that Cheech and Chong energy to this performance.
For sure. And some of the party scenes are pretty funny, especially when they start converting all the uptight 80s yuppies back to their hippie ways.
Right?
The movie doesn't exactly have the most sophisticated humor, but it has its moments.
Yeah, like, seriously, some of the political humor still holds up today.
Definitely. The commentary on the gentrification and corporate greed doesn't feel dated at all.
No, definitely doesn't. And sadly, the jokes still work because we're still dealing with the same issues today in 2025, y'all.
So, this movie wasn't exactly a hit when it came out.
Definitely was it. It pretty much bombed at the box office, making about $3 million on an $8 million budget, y'all.
Ouch.
Right?
And critics weren't kind to it either.
No, Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, I think. Said it had a good premise, but didn't do enough with it.
Which is kind of fair. The movie has interesting ideas, but the execution is a bit scattershot.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the problem was that it couldn't decide if it wanted to be a broad comedy or a political satire, you know?
And it came out at the end of the 80s when people weren't really in the mood for 60s nostalgia yet.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gigi. Like, a few years later, there was kind of a 60s revival in the culture. But in 1989, the 80s were still kicking it strong.
People weren't ready to be criticized for their shoulder pads and Wall Street jobs.
Right? But hey, this movie has developed a bit of cult following over the years.
Especially among fans of Cheech Marin's solo work.
Yeah, I think modern audiences might actually appreciate the political themes more than people did back then, you know?
For sure. The whole selling out versus staying true to your principles thing is timeless.
That's right. And the critique of gentrification feels super relevant today still.
You know what's interesting? This movie came out the same year as Field of Dreams, which has that line, "Hey, is this heaven? No, it's Iowa."
What's the connection?
Just that both movies are kind of about baby boomers grappling with that, what happened to their ideals, you know. One through baseball nostalgia, one through political activism.
I mean, that's kind of a stretch, Juju.
Maybe. I'm just saying it was in a zeitgeist.
If you say so, bro. But I think Rude Awakening has really aged better than people might have expected. Even if it's not exactly a classic, you know?
It's definitely a product of its time, but in a way that makes it an interesting time capsule.
Right? Alright, it is time for our ratings, guys. On the Mike and Juju scale of 1 to 10 medicinal herbs, what are you giving Rude Awakening, Juju?
I'm going to give it a solid 6.5 out of 10 medicinal herbs. It's got good intentions and some funny moments, but it doesn't quite come together as a whole.
Alright, I think I'm right there with you, but I'm going to go about a 6.8. Like, I appreciate the political themes and the performances. Especially Crybaby Eric Roberts, who's doing something really different here for him.
And Cheech is always entertaining, even if the material isn't always up to his level.
Yeah. Alright, so, we both agree this movie has heart, which counts for something, right?
For sure. And it's trying to say something meaningful about society.
Right.
Even if it gets a little heavy-handed.
Alright, so who would you recommend this to?
Definitely fans of Cheech Marin, obviously.
Right.
People who are interested in that transition period between the 60s counterculture and the 80s corporate culture.
Yeah, I think they go over a lot better today than maybe it did in the 90s. Anyone who enjoys a good fish out of water comedy with a little bit of political undertones, this is it.
It's not streaming anywhere for free right now, but you can rent it on most platforms.
Hey, and if you're really old school, you might be able to find it on VHS at a thrift store.
Very appropriate for this movie.
Alright, y'all, that is Rude Awakening from 1989, directed by Greenwald and Aaron Russo, starring the one and only Cheech Marin and the crybaby himself, Eric Roberts, y'all. If I don't get to, you don't get to. They gotta wait for it. This guy. Alright, y'all make sure y'all hit that subscribe button and smash down that notification bell and be really nice to him so he lets you know when we put out new content. Hey, and while you're at it, leave us a comment letting us know if you've seen Rude Awakening and what you thought of it.
I don't know about you, but I could really go for some snacks right now.
Alright then, let's wrap this one up first. As always, y'all keep watching those weird ones.
Peace out, movie lovers.
I'm your boy and your host, Mike.
I'm your co-host, Juju.
Peace.